When it comes to answering the question, how much experience do you need to write a novel? The bad news is maybe a lot. Yes, you could need a great deal of experience to write pretty much anything. The good news is, however, you already have experience and a good deal of it. You're probably thinking, I never went to school to learn how to write a novel. Well, actually, you did. Several years of it, and that experience has given you the foundation you need to write just about anything and make it interesting. Time for another of my little tales. Several years ago, in a rural area, there lived a man named Charlton Mannings. He lived in the biggest house, drove the most expensive car, and married the prettiest woman. And he got all of this in a most diabolical manner. He had found a way to profit by blaming others for acts they had not committed. He eventually began blackmailing his neighbors for his silence. For years, he continued swindling his neighbors out of their hard earned savings, and while they struggled to put food on their table, he and his trophy wife lived a life of luxury. Finally, his neighbors could take it no more and made it quite obvious to Charlton and his wife that they were no longer going to be held hostage by their own conscience for much longer. Then, on a relatively warm night, the neighbors band together and marched to Charlton's farm, where he was last seen hiding. But when they smashed down the door and rushed inside, they saw him hanged from a rope 30 feet in the air, very much dead. The body was wet from the waist down, and below it was a puddle of water. Detective Chief Inspector Wright was called in to investigate. Detective Constable Montague was already on the scene and met the inspector at the barn. It's a clear cut case of murder, said Detective Constable Montague. From what I have surmised while waiting your arrival, sir, it seems that two or more of the townspeople were lying in wait for the victim to enter his barn. They then held him down while one of them tied a rope around his neck, probably killing him at that time. Then, after throwing the other end up over one of the rafters, they pulled the dead body up to where you see him now. It seems by the look of his wet trousers, the ordeal caused him to wet himself and create this small puddle of urine directly below. Detective Chief Inspector Wright had been looking over the entire crime scene intently while Detective Constable Montague spoke. When he was done, he turned to him and said, "There has been no murder here today. We are looking at a suicide, not a homicide. Today I'm going to help you remember what you learned to make it possible to write a novel. And then I'll tell you how Detective Chief Inspector Wright knew it was a suicide." In an earlier video, I talked about show and tell in grade school. I talked about how this wasn't simply so you could bring in your favorite toy and brag about it. It was a carefully engineered exercise that helped you to advance your writing talents by aiding you in improving your communication skills while encouraging you to narrate them and your experiences, which in turn helped you to develop your storytelling skills. Do you remember those book reports you were made to write? This wasn't your teacher's way of finding something more for you to do. On the contrary, those book reports served to help enhance your reading comprehension, which led to developing critical thinking and writing skills while encouraging you to express your opinions about what you perceived in that book. Do you remember having to write a short story in class? You had already had a fair amount of experience in past years with show and tell before those book reports. So, when you were asked by your teacher to write a short story, you kind of already had the basic knowledge in you. Remember, throughout those years with show and tell and book reports, you were also learning grammar. I know for some, that stirs up bad memories of things like dangling modifiers and conjunctive adverbs and pronouns, and don't get me started on possessive adjectives. But what those classes were doing were to help you improve your ability to communicate by ensuring clarity and accuracy in your writing as well as your speaking, which ultimately led to stronger language skills. So, when you were finally asked to write a short story, somewhere in your head was all the ingredients you needed to make a good start on one. But all of this wasn't because your teacher was trying to make you into an author. No. All those prior years with the showing and telling and book reports and story writing, along with journals and diaries, was also preparing you for everyone's favorite, wait for it, the essay. Yeah. You were being disciplined in preparation for the day when you would have to begin writing essays. It's a known fact that people generally dread writing essays, and a big reason for that is it just seems so confusing. But it only appears confusing for the simple fact you have forgotten a lot of what you had been learning in those prior formative years. But a funny thing about the human mind, it's like one of those hoarders. Once it collects something, it never throws it away. So, as much as you may have forgotten a lot of what you learned about grammar and comprehension and critical thinking, it's still there, probably just pushed behind some stuff. But it starts to come back as you painstakingly structure your first essay. Now, essay writing, like the other things you've learned, has been assigned to you for a reason. It trains you to expand your research skills, pay attention to detail, understand the value of time management, and enhance problem solving. So, by the time you're out of school with a few essays under your belt, you will have had extensive years of schooling in the art of writing. Now, like I said earlier, your teacher wasn't trying to turn you into an author. What your teacher was doing was giving you the skills so that if one day you decided to have a career as a writer, you would already possess the basic skills to do so. But just because you have those years of experience doesn't necessarily mean that you will be a successful writer. Let's say your parents have a pool in the backyard and you've swam in it every day for the past 10 years. It doesn't mean you're good enough to represent your country in the Olympics. Like with anything in life, if you want to be good at it, you need to work at it. You've heard the saying, the more you put into something, the more you get out of it. Very few people in history have had the ability to adapt to a skill without first going through the demanding progression of attaining it. Shakespeare, Mozart, Leonardo da Vinci, Charles Darwin, Albert Einstein, along with a select few of others throughout history, are the exception to that rule. For the rest of us, we need to take whatever we now know from wherever we learned it and apply that knowledge to our pursuit of the vocation that we intend to master. For those of you listening to my every word, your chosen vocation is most likely writing. Now, getting back to the original question, how much experience do I need to write a novel? Well, you need only the amount necessary to create the story you intend to write. I know that's a very vague answer, but to be honest, that's a very vague question. It's like asking, how much gas do I need to get where I'm going? Where are you going? Where are you leaving from? Do you drive a small car, large car, a truck, or a bus? How old is this vehicle? How well tuned is it? Will you be driving along flatlands or up and down mountains? You can see it's impossible to answer with any accuracy without all the criteria available. Writing a novel is no different. What genre are you planning on writing in? Have you ever written in that genre before? Does your story require extensive research? Is that research readily available? It's important to understand that the experience that you need to write your novel depends on you. Writing a novel about your own personal experiences is a great deal easier for you than writing about a topic you have no prior knowledge of. Like I said earlier, you have the basic schooling to be able to write a novel. It's just the fine tuning that's needed now. With the research aspect of preparing to write your novel aside, because let's face it, even the best seasoned writers need to research any topic they have no prior knowledge of. You need to understand experience isn't that prerequisite you gather in bulk before you begin your novel. Experience is the journey you take while creating it. And the more stories you sit down to write, the more experience you will realize. So, if you really want to know how much experience you need to write your novel, I'll simply say this: as much as you can discover. And now, I'll tell you the ending of the story I call A Chilly Way to Go. Detective Chief Inspector Wright knew right away that it was a suicide when he saw the broken barn door and knew it had been bolted from the inside. But that wasn't what really convinced him. Looking up at the dead body 30 feet in the air, he knew that the wet trousers weren't the result of urine. The puddle of a clear liquid, not a yellowish liquid, proved that. He then knew, without a shadow of a doubt, what had happened. Before arriving, Detective Chief Inspector Wright had done a little research on Charlton and knew he liked to blame others for acts they hadn't committed. So, as a last effort to blame his neighbors for an act they hadn't committed, he had built a 30-foot staircase out of ice and, after putting a rope around his neck, sat there and waited for the ice to melt, bringing about his own death and causing the blame to be put on his neighbors. Thanks for watching. And if you found anything that I said beneficial to you in any way, hit that subscribe button, because you never know, my next video might just be helpful too.